Hello and welcome back to Stop and Go F1 for this, our first driver ratings of the year, and it's for the Australian Grand Prix. We're gonna give each driver a score between 1 and 10, and looking at my notes here, we have got an awful lot of 10s. We've also got quite a few lower numbers as well. We'll get into all that and more in just a moment, but remember to like and subscribe, and a huge shout out to the members: Dakota, The Joyous James, Robbie Myers, Cinnamon Strudel, Michael Johnson, and F. Now, driver ratings. So, as we know, we have got the biggest rookie field in F1 in quite some time. 6 rookie drivers on the grid at the moment. So, for them, I'm going to give them a bit of an easier ride for the first 5 or 6 races. They're not immune to low scores, but they're not going to get the lowest of the low because they're rookies. Also, with some guys who have changed team, I might just give them like an extra point over a driver who has stayed in a consistent team just because they're getting used to stuff for the first few races or so. So if you see a driver in a new team or a rookie who has a score that you think is too high, that might be why. With that being said, let's get into this. Here we go. Boom. There we are, everyone. Look at these new lovely graphics. Fantastic stuff. Let's get into it then with Gabriele Bortoleto, who I am a big fan of. The reigning Formula 2 champion, former Formula 3 champion, now here with everyone's favourite Formula 1 team, Stake F1 team kick Sauber. And what has he done then? He qualified 15th and he didn't finish the race. Now, a lot to break down here because I think what he did before he DNF'd was actually quite fantastic. Out-qualified Nico Hülkenberg in qualifying. The race itself was all right. I think Hülkenberg got past him relatively quickly and he spent a lot of the race just kind of in front of the Haas's, just going from there. Looking at the moment where he does DNF, it looks like there was an issue with the car before the crash, which may have led to the crash. Because if you look at the replay of when he does spin out, you can see, I think it's the back right tyre, that something's falling off it already. I think the brake was broken, and apparently on the radio he's complaining that something was broken on the lap before. So I would not say it was a skill issue for why he crashed the car. Also, if you haven't seen it, check out the F1 TV post-show thing that they put on YouTube. There's an interview there with Nico Hülkenberg where he's speaking up Bortoleto, and he talks wonderfully about him, about how quick he is and how much of a great guy he is. So a lot of talent here for Gabriele Bortoleto. I think, again, it doesn't truly reflect his ability, the fact that the car didn't make it to the end, because I think that was a car issue. I'm just going to give him straight down the middle a 5. Just keep it simple, keep it safe. 5 out of 10. Cross to his teammate now, though, Nico Hülkenberg, and my God, what a man. He's done it again. I sang his praises all year last year for his time in the Haas, and it's looking like a good start to that as well. Qualified in 17th, was beaten by his teammates, but in the end comes home in P7. So that means that Sauber already in 2025 have more points than they did in 2024. Fantastic stuff from Nico Hülkenberg. Got the most out of that car. Beats both Ferraris, beats one of the McLarens. You stayed on track, did really well. Another 10 out of 10 for Nico Hülkenberg. Fantastic job to him. Well done, Nico. Hopefully this is not just the high point that goes completely off the rails for the rest of the season, and hopefully you can consistently have some good results going forward, because we all love the Hulk. Here's Alexander Albon, though. And another man who did incredibly well. We knew that the Williams had some pace coming into this weekend from what we saw in testing and all that kind of stuff, but I don't think anyone was expecting them to be as good as this, because Alex Albon had a fantastic race here. Qualified 6th, finished the race in 5th, was briefly 4th, but Antonelli's penalty was rescinded and he went back down to 5th. Like I said in my race review yesterday, I've got to hold my hands up here because I was one of the guys who said that he's going to be exposed by Sainz, he's going to be destroyed, it's going to be the end of his career, it's over for him, and who knows, we still have many races to go, that might still happen. But as of right now, Alex Albon was far, far better than Carlos Sainz this weekend. Massively out-qualified him. Sainz, of course, was out of the race in the early moments. Albon powered through, seemingly didn't make any mistakes. Top 5 at a Williams is incredible. We talked about with Hulk, how now Sauber have more points this year than they did last year. Not quite the case with Williams, but very close. I think they had 17 points last year, and what's he on now? Now that he was fifth, I think. I don't even know how many points to get for fifth. Who knows? But he's not too far off Williams' entire points haul last year. Williams looking in a very good place this year. I'm looking forward to seeing what they do. But as of right now, Alex Albon, 10 out of 10. Fantastic result for Albon and for the Williams team. Cross to Carlos Sainz now. Qualified 10th. Did not finish the race. Spanned the car behind the safety car on the opening laps of the race. There was quite a nice bit after the race where it turned out that after he had DNF, he didn't kind of just run away. He stayed with the team and helped the strategy team guide Albon through the race to eventually get that good points result. So a great team play from Carlos Sainz, but we're not scoring him for his team play. We're scoring for him for what he did in the race, and what he did wasn't really that much. I've given him a 3, and I do think in a way that is a little bit generous because he did spin behind the safety car, but from what, someone like Martin Brundle was saying, it was kind of one of those things where the car, it wasn't a skill issue, it was more like the car was going to spin and you weren't going to catch it, and it's just one of those things that just happens in a wet race. I feel very sorry for him, because I know he wanted to make a good impression here, but there's still many, many races to go. Qualifying was a bit of a disappointment as well, if I'm being honest with you. I expected a lot better than 10th, especially considering Albon was in 6th. But, it's one of those things. Brand new team, you're getting used to stuff. Sainz will have many good races for the rest of the year. Just a bad start to his time at Williams, but surely he can bounce back next weekend in China. Isaac Hadjar. Oh, dear. Oh, no. Right, so, Isaac Hadjar. I thought was really impressive until he wasn't, but I still just feel so sorry for him. In all the build-up to this, all the interviews I've seen with him, he just comes across as one of the nicest lads on the grid. I think he's a wonderful person, and I really wish him the best in the future and across the rest of this season. Qualifying, I thought, for him was fantastic. Qualified in P11. And I think as well his fastest lap, his final lap in Q2, was compromised because of Hamilton's spin. And I think in the end he was only like 0.06 off the back of getting into Q3. So there was definitely more pace available for him in that qualifying lap. I think he could have been, he would have been much closer to Yuki. I don't know if he could have matched Yuki necessarily. But from there, he gets to the race and of course spins in the formation lap on the first corner, and that's him done. We saw him crying his eyes out, obviously devastated, understandably, comforted by Anthony Hamilton and Stefano Domenicali. It's come out today that Helmut Marko has been a bit awful, but that's Helmut Marko for you. He's always a bit awful. But yeah, it's hard because I like him and I want him to do well, but you have to judge what's in front of you. Again, I've given him a bit of a higher score because, firstly, his qualifying was very good. Secondly, he's a rookie. I've just gone for a 3 out of 10. And I know there'll be someone in the comments saying that's too high. But you know what? Make your own YouTube channel with your own scores. There you go. Here's his teammate now, Yuki Tsunoda, who qualified in 5th place, ended up in 12th. But that is not a true representative of how good this man's race was. He was exceptional. In the top 5 for most of the race. Then at that late moment when the rain came down and the changeover, he stayed out that extra lap, much like Verstappen did. And of everyone who stayed out that extra lap, the only man who seemingly was not affected by it is Max Verstappen. Everyone else fell down the order, including Tsunoda, who eventually would finish in P12, but that does not show how good of a race this man was having. No real mistakes for him, was faster than both the Ferraris for the entire race. He was exceptional, really great stuff. Unfortunately, he comes away with nothing. You've got to take that into account when scoring. I've given him an 8 out of 10, but even I feel that's a little bit too low because it was a fantastic race. The Racing Bulls car looks actually quite decent, which I was not expecting going into this race weekend at all. Hopefully it can continue that momentum and Yuki can get some good points next time out in China, because he definitely deserves it. Was a fantastic race for him. Wasn't his fault that he didn't score any points, but really, really good stuff. Across to Haas. Oh dear, Haas. What's happened? This car looks dreadful. Ollie Behrman had a very, very bad weekend. So, crashes in FP1. Because of that, he can't go in FP2. And in FP3, he beaches it. In qualifying, gearbox issue means he can't set a time. And then in the race, starts from the pit lane and is basically at the back for the entire thing. Finishes in P14. Yeah, the race itself was fine. I think the Haas has not got enough pace to challenge anyone. Both him and Ocon were just at the back for basically the entire thing. So there was no real challenge for them. But that being said, he was a rookie. He didn't crash the car. He just kept it going. I mean, it's a difficult one to rate because, like I said, points down for qualifying. And, you could say, well, that was a gearbox issue. That wasn't his fault. But also, after his crash, they had to change the gearbox. And maybe that change is what caused the gearbox to fail in qualifying. So you never know with that kind of thing. But yeah, it's a difficult one. I'm going to give him a 6. I think a 6 is okay. Across to Esteban Ocon now. He qualified 18th. The only people he was ahead of was Ollie Behrman and Liam Lawson, who both started in the pit lane. In the race itself, finished 13th, which is some good positions gained until you realise the only person on the track he actually beat was Ollie Behrman. The Haas is nowhere. Complete opposite to where it was this time last year. It looks absolutely dreadful yet again. It looks like the slowest car on the entire track. Even Sauber have leapfrogged them in 2025. Not looking good at all. But again, Ocon, no mistakes for him. Made it to the end. I'm just going to give him a 7. I think that's relatively fair. Across to Jack Doohan now in the Alpine. And again, this is just a very, very similar story to the Isaac Hadjar stuff, where it's like... I like him a lot. I think he came across really well. His qualifying lap was also compromised by Hamilton's spin, so I think he did qualify 14th, but he could have done a hell of a lot better without that yellow flag in the final sector. And then, again, DNF, very similar things to what happened to Carlos Sainz. Yes, the rear end just went on him and he ended up in the wall. It's just what happens in a wet race. He's a rookie. I'm going to give him a 3. I hope he gets more opportunities to shine from here, and they don't replace him too soon, because I think he has got quite a bit of talent. And hopefully he gets to show that soon. Here's Pierre Gasly. I was expecting quite a bit more from Gasly than what we saw. So qualified 9th, finished the race in 11th. And another guy who was badly affected by that wet burst at the end. When he set out a lap extra, he was around about 9th for the entire race, realistically, until that last moment. So would have come away from it with a few points. I thought the Alpine was a bit faster than it actually was. Or maybe that was just the wet weather, who knows. But yeah, on the track, I thought did pretty well. Again, it was one of those guys who didn't really make any mistakes. Just the team got the strategy wrong at the end, so he comes away with nothing, just missing out. I mean, when you look at the race itself and that changeover points, yes, he stays out an extra lap, but he is ahead of both the Ferraris. Of course, he's ahead of Piastri as well. And then they just have that faster pace. They come through at the end and push him down to 11th, which is a shame to see, but that's just how it goes. I'm going to give him a 7 as well from there. Right, Lance Stroll now. And a fun thing about Lance Stroll is I think, so this is the 3rd season I've done for race reviews and driver ratings and all that kind of stuff. And I think in the previous 2 seasons, in the opening races, I've given Lance Stroll a 10 out of 10. And he's made it 3 for 3, because I'm giving Lance Stroll a 10 out of 10. Because the Aston looked dreadful all the way through testing, and in practice as well, it just didn't look very good. Then in qualifying, it seemed to have a bit of pace, but nowhere near the pace that Lance showed us here. I mean, in qualifying itself, he qualifies 13th, which, is actually fair. It's higher than I thought the Aston would be, if I'm being perfectly honest with you. But then every now and again, a wet race will come around, and Lance Stroll will just be like, oh yeah, I'm just going to be really good this weekend. The last wet race we had was Brazil, where he spun on the formation lap, then slowly drove into a gravel trap and beached himself. And then Australia, he turns up, it's a wet race, and he just goes, you know what, I'm not going to make any mistakes. I'm going to beat both Ferraris. I'm going to beat a McLaren. I'm going to beat Nico Hülkenberg. I'm just going to finish 6th. It's like, that's Aston's best result, I think, since Saudi Arabia last year. It's like, what the hell is this? How has he done this? I don't understand at all, but he's done it. So, well done, Lance. You've done it again. You've got another 10 out of 10 from me. Best of luck for the rest of the season. Fernando Alonso now qualifies in 12th, then doesn't finish the race. He makes it, I think, about halfway through, maybe 3/4 of the way through the race, until he just like Doohan and like Sainz, he just kind of loses the rear end. I think he just got on the curb a bit. He says in his post-race interview that he didn't take more curb than he did in any other lap of that race. But he just lost it on the curb, was in the wall. Was doing pretty well till then, was looking to get some okay points for the team. That's just kind of how it is sometimes. I'm going to give him a 5 out of 10. Now, here's someone I want to talk about. Andrea Kimi Antonelli. Or as I should really call him, my bloody hero. Oh my god. What a man! Incredible from Kimi Antonelli. What a fantastic, fantastic debut. So, qualifies 16th, but realistically does not represent his pace because the suspension of the car failed and it was dragging itself across Albert Park. So realistically, not representative of his true pace in qualifying. But it turns out it doesn't matter when he qualifies because he's just got the pace to finish wherever the hell he wants. Just cuts through the field in the wet, a young rookie. I think he's the 3rd youngest driver ever in the history of Formula 1. 3rd or 4th, I think. It's Max Stroll, then it's either Behrman from Saudi last year or it's Kimi. He's in that conversation. So he's either the 3rd or 4th youngest driver in the history of Formula 1. But he looked like a bloody veteran. He just kept the car on the track all the time. No mistakes from him. Overtakes left, right and centre. Got it done perfectly, finishes in 4th place, 16th to 4th, in the wet, in your debut. Incredible stuff from Kimi Antonelli. What an exceptional talent he is. I cannot wait to see what he does for the rest of the year, because that was amazing, and of course, gets a 10 out of 10. Take a bow, Mr. Antonelli. See you next week in China. His teammate, though, George Russell, again, great race from him. Qualifies in 4th, finishes up in 3rd. And like I said in the race review, it was kind of the thing of like, you saw George at the start, and then a couple hours passed, and you saw him again on the podium. I don't remember seeing him do anything in the race at all, not even in a replay. He just kept it safe, kept it consistent. That's kind of what George does. He's Mr. Consistency, really. He just kind of goes, right, I'll do it again, and I'll do another lap, and I'll do on the podium. Oh, that's very nice. So yeah, a very good result for George Russell. A 10 out of 10 for him. Straightforward there. Oh dear. Liam Lawson. Oh god, this is tough, isn't it? So, he qualified 18th, but then chose to start from the pit lane. It also should be worth noting that in FP3 he had got an issue there, so didn't get any real running in FP3. So any set of changes that were made to that car, he didn't really test them until qualifying itself. So, that should really be taken into consideration. But then we get to the race, and just kind of nowhere again. I mean, if you look at the race itself, he's just nowhere, ever. Like, for a lot of the race, it's just like, he's beating the Haas lads, and it's just like, do something. Do an overtake. At this point, Max Verstappen is keeping consistency with the McLarens. And the McLarens are like a second lap faster than everyone else. But Max is there in between the two of them, keeping pace at this point. And, very much like I said with Checo last year, I don't expect him to be on the same level as Max Verstappen. That's not what I'm asking for from him. I'm just expecting him to be, at least a level down. At least beating a Sauber. Is that too much to ask? I know it's a new team for him, and I know that this car is very difficult to drive, but he was just nowhere. I think the only moment he got into the top 10 was in that moment of madness at the end, where some people pit for the inters. He stood out in the dries and got past them in the pit lane, but then ended up in the wall. So it's just like, oh, I feel so sorry for him, because again, another guy who seems to come across as a very nice guy, a very funny guy. Hopefully, and I think he will get better as the season goes on. He'll get more and more used to the car. And, this was a mad race where mad stuff happened. And I'm sure he will get points and whatever like that. I think he'll be relatively safe, because I think, we have this whole thing with the Red Bull second driver seat and who's going to be sacked next and whatever it might be. But I think with Red Bull at the minute, they can't afford to be sucking their second driver, because Max might be going at any moment at this, because the Red Bull isn't on the pace anymore. You've got the likes of an Aston Martin who are reportedly ready to offer him $1 billion. You've got Toto Wolff who's been flirting with him for a year. You never know, Max might be leaving. You can't afford to be getting rid of your second driver now, because then you need to replace 2 drivers, never mind the one. So I think he's relatively safe, because it's pretty obvious they're not going to be calling up Yuki Tsunoda. They don't want him, and I think Yuki will be leaving the Red Bull family relatively soon. It seems like Helmut Marko doesn't like Isaac Hadjar, and your only other option is Arvid Lindblad, who had an okay F2 debut. So, the Red Bull in a tough spot with their drivers at the minute. But yeah, not a great weekend for Liam Lawson, who, I'm going to give him a 2. And I feel that's a bit harsh, but I feel the ceiling is high for Liam Lawson, and he'll bounce back from this, hopefully next week, and get some good results in. Prove the haters wrong, Mr. Lawson, including myself. We'll see you next week. Max Verstappen. What can I say about this man that hasn't already been said? Qualifies third, finishes the race in second. Early part of the race, he has kept the speed with the McLarens. Got past Oscar at the start. Only real mistake was near the start of the race, where he got on the curb into turn 11. Got on the curb, that let Piastri go past. But then after that, you see the pace advantage that the McLarens had. Piastri was going to get past either way. Kind of just ran his own race for quite a lot of it. He's trying to keep the Inters in the window and make them last as long as he possibly could. He was in this weird spot where he was quite a margin behind the McLarens, but still quite a margin in front of everyone else. And then, he's just that guy. He's just always going to be there. You can never, ever, ever write him out, because no matter what happens, he was just always there. And in that moment where both of the McLarens went off, when the rain came down, there was not a single person watching that race who didn't think Max can win this. And then in that moment where they pit for the Inters and he stays out on the dries, there's a bit of your mind that goes, he can win this. But then it becomes apparent that was the wrong thing to do. He pits and ends up behind the McLaren again, behind the McLaren of Lando Norris. But then, in the dying moments of the race, he's less than a second behind Lando Norris, and you think, he can win this. He's in a car which is dramatically slower than the McLaren is at the moment in this race. But still, you're watching this thinking, he can win this, because he's that good. I mean, this was just another fantastic race for him. Like I said, made one slight mistake throughout the entire race weekend, but realistically, in that car, he should have finished third. He finished second, 0.8 of a second behind Lando Norris, which I think is possibly the closest any two cars were on the track over the finish line, apart from maybe Piastri and Leclerc, I think, were closer. But apart from that, the closest two drivers were Max Verstappen and Lando Norris. A fantastic job from Max. Do not write him off for this championship just yet, especially with the flexi wing stuff coming in. And we saw last year how you can't judge the start of the season for the entire rest of the season. Who knows what's to come, but a very good start from Max Verstappen. 18 points on the board. As he said, 18 points more than he had in Australia last year. 10 out of 10 from me for Max Verstappen. Ferrari. Oh dear. So, Lewis Hamilton, where he is on my notes. Qualifies 8th, finished the race in 10th. Again, for both Ferrari lads, their position at the end of the race, realistically, is because Ferrari got the strategy wrong at the end. Lewis Hamilton did lead a lap in the Ferrari, which, is a good thing. He has a lap led in a Ferrari. But overall, was kind of just nowhere for the entire race. He's stuck behind Albon for a lot of the start of the race. Then just, got it wrong on the changeover, but that's not his fault. Leclerc had a spin at one point, and Hamilton got past him. That's why Hamilton was leading the race at that wet point. But I don't really know how Leclerc got past him. I don't know, it was in turn one, wasn't it? In turn one, Leclerc, I think, went round the outside. Yeah, not a great race for Lewis as a Ferrari debut. I saw someone say online that in the past 25 years, only one Ferrari driver has had a worse debut than Lewis Hamilton, and I think it was that one who filled in for Felipe Massa when he had his injury in 2009. I mean, I'm not writing off Lewis and Ferrari just yet. I still think they'll go on to do great things, and I still think they can do it in this season. I think he can still win races, get podiums. I think that's totally still on the cards for sure. The Ferrari is considerably slower than the McLaren, than the Mercedes, and than Max Verstappen. But there still is potential here. He's having quite a few arguments with his engineer on the radio, which is a very strange thing to hear from Lewis Hamilton, because, of course, him and Bono had that fantastic relationship that built up over a decade. So they were like best friends in terms of, maybe off the track as well, but on the track as a team pairing there. So that, there's bedding in issues here for Lewis and Ferrari. I'm sure they can get around it, but, you have to say that this wasn't necessarily the start that they wanted. I'm going to give him a 6. Maybe that's a bit generous. I don't know, but that's the score I have given him. Here's Charles Leclerc now. And again, qualified in 7th, finished in 8th. Had a spin when the rain came down, which gave Hamilton that position. That was his only real mistake I can remember in this race. It's just the Ferrari has no pace at all. I mean, the highlight of the race for him was saying to his engineer, "There's water in my seat," and the engineer going, "Yeah, that's probably the water." So, if that's the highlight of your race, it hasn't gone very well. I'm going to give him a 7, just because, he beat Hamilton and he beat Piastri. I know he made that mistake, but he made up for it in the end. That's just how it is. Let's move on from Ferrari, just like Ferrari will be moving on from this weekend. Oh, Oscar Piastri. Oh, dear. Oh, dear. This is a hard one. Qualifies 2nd, loses out to Max Verstappen at the start of the race to fall down to 3rd, but does make that position up, is consistently with Lando. At one point is much faster than Lando, then is told to hold position, makes a little mistake on the curb, falls a few seconds behind, but makes it back up again, and then the rain comes down. And the thing is, it's not like it was just him who made a mistake. Lando also made the same mistake. And I wouldn't be surprised if, this happens sometimes. We saw it happen with George Russell in Singapore. When you're following a guy behind so closely, instead of racing your own line, you tend to race their line. So I wouldn't be surprised if maybe he was just so focused on Lando and sticking behind him that when Lando made that mistake, he also just instinctually made the exact same mistake, because they're both off in that gravel. They come back on. Lando is able to just keep it going, whereas Piastri carries on going into the grass of the penultimate corner. You know what? You've got to give him praise for fighting to get it back, reversing that car back. A lot of drivers would have been in that grass and just gone, "I'm stuck, it's over, call it a day." Even the F1 graphics gave up on him. If you watch the race again, when he's in that grass, the F1 graphics go, "Piastri out, he's done." But he goes, "You know what? I'm not done. This is my home race." He reverses the car out of the grass. He gets it back on track. He keeps on going. He comes back. A fantastic overtake, it has to be said, on Lewis Hamilton round the outside of turn 9 to get him 9th place over the 7-time world champion, and comes home in 9th, gets a couple points for the McLaren team. Realistically, he should have been 2nd. He should have been the first Australian driver to ever be on the Australian Grand Prix podium and be able to keep it. Sorry, Daniel Ricciardo. He could have been the first Australian driver to ever win the Australian Grand Prix, but McLaren called for team orders at the wrong time. It's all a case of what should have been for Oscar Piastri. Overall, a very good race until it wasn't, but even when it wasn't, showed glimpses of determination and bravery. I think he'll be disappointed by this result, but there is good signs all over for him. I'm giving him a 5, but the ceiling is high for young Oscar Piastri. I look forward to seeing what he does throughout the rest of the season. And then there's only one man left to talk about, and his name is Lando Norris. He qualified first. He finished the race in 1st place, taking his 5th win of his career from his 10th pole position, and now is our championship leader for the first time in over 1,000 days. Max Verstappen does not lead the championship. It is Lando Norris. I'll just get out of the way. I'm giving him a 10 out of 10 as well. Again, you can look at it and say, well, look, he made mistakes here and he made mistakes here, and maybe he had a bit of luck on his side to maybe not be in the grass like Piastri was, but sometimes you need a bit of luck on your side to get through a race like this, where basically everyone else was making mistakes. He kept it on the track. Another mistake was he made a mistake on the dying moments, which allowed Max to close in on him. But, Max Verstappen, in your mirrors, on a wet track, you've already been off the track once. He kept it calm, kept it safe, brought it home, won the race. That nearly rhymed, maybe it did. But there you go. 10 out of 10 for Lando Norris. And that's our driver rating. So, we have 10s for Lando Norris, Max Verstappen, George Russell, Kimi Antonelli, Lance Stroll, and Alex Albon and Nico Hulkenberg. Lowest score of the weekend goes to Liam Lawson. Why am I so low down? I've just noticed on the screen. I'll sit up a bit. There you go. The lowest score of the weekend goes to Liam Lawson. Like I said, a lot of these guys can do a hell of a lot better, and hopefully they will throughout the rest of the season. We'll be back next weekend for the Chinese Grand Prix. Remember, it is a sprint race weekend, so the preview will be on Thursday. We'll have reactions to qualifying on Friday, then sprint race and qualifying reactions on Saturday, race reactions on the Sunday, and also it is the return of F1 Academy for 2025, so all the coverage of that as well will be on the channel. Until then, though, have a good one. I will see you later. Have a good one. I'll say it again because my mouse was not in the right place to click stop recording. Have a good one. See you later. Goodbye.